Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has now presented a document to a security cabinet laying out his plan for Gaza once this war ends. It includes completely removing the UN agency UNWRA and replacing it with other aid agencies. The plan doesn't exclude the Palestinian Authority from governing the Strip in the future, but it does say that Israel will maintain, and I'm quoting here, freedom of action in the entire Strip without a time limit. It also says Gaza should be completely demilitarized, except for weapons that are necessary to maintain public order. Well, let's get more now from Hamda Salhut. She's in occupied East Jerusalem. Hamda, Netanyahu gave more details to the cabinet about his plan. Talk us through those.
Well, Nastasia, this is the first time the Israeli Prime Minister had put in black and white exactly what his thoughts or plans were for what he calls the day after the war on Gaza. Previously, he had only spoken about it in statements, and he had had these positions that were known, but they weren't really talked about or put on paper because he said it would get in the way of Israel's current ground invasion into Gaza. So this document goes through a series of things. The first one let's talk about is governance. While he doesn't exactly rule out the Palestinian Authority ruling the Gaza Strip, remember, the Americans want to see a revitalized Palestinian Authority, and it doesn't blatantly say that the PA cannot control Gaza once the war is over, but it's something the Israeli Prime Minister had reiterated in speeches and in other statements of his that was his hardline position. The document also talks about reconstruction. However, he says that Arab states are going to foot the bill for the reconstruction, but only Arab states that Israel approves of, and that reconstruction cannot commence until there is a total demilitarization of Gaza. Once that is over, he says there needs to be a new phase of what he calls de-radicalization, when these new leaders, whoever they may be, go into Gaza. And when he's talking about UNWRA, he is saying that the UN agency needs to be completely shut down. It is one of the only lifelines for millions of Palestinians in Gaza as they go throughout this war. But the main focal point of this was the Israeli Prime Minister talking about the military and Gaza once the war is over, that there's going to be a security zone, a military occupation, and that the Israeli forces are going to go into Gaza whenever they see fit to have what he calls a freedom of movement and freedom of action to conduct operations however they see fit in the future in Gaza once the war is over.
And Hamda, before I let you go, today we found out another Palestinian prisoner is dead in Israeli custody. What do we know about the circumstances?
The Israeli Authority is not releasing a ton of information about the Palestinian man who died in Israeli detention. We're talking about a man from Gaza who was arrested once the ground offensive began, so after October the 7th, and that he died in an Israeli jail. He is now the 10th Palestinian to die in Israeli detention since the beginning of this war, and the Israeli authorities have a practice of withholding the bodies and the remains of Palestinians who have died while in Israeli prisons. So not a lot of information coming out about who this man was or specifically where in Gaza he was from, but we do know that he was arrested by the Israeli military in Gaza once the war began.
Hamda Salhut there with the latest for us from occupied East Jerusalem. Thanks, Hamda.